My name's Alex Gelly. I'm in comparative literature here, and I have the privilege and pleasure of introducing Fred today. It's very nice to be allowed to do this, coming after other people who've been his friends and associates and other connections. He was here many years ago, too many years ago, in my department in Complet for a short time. And we're very happy to welcome him back. So in saying a few words, I had to think hard. In a way, I view it as a kind of, I'm an outsider, of course, to your field and to his field. I view it as a kind of potluck situation where you bring what you can from your own home. And so the best I could think of was to come up with a passage from Kafka. He talked a lot yesterday. Fred talked a lot about, of course, the chapter "The Negro and Language" from Fanon's Black Skin and White Masks. And in regard to the whole notion of pidgin, which fascinated me, and I tried to think, what could I cite relevant to pidgin? And it seemed to me the best term I could come up with was the German word or the Yiddish word Mauscheln, which a funny word that a Yiddish word that is often used disparagingly for kind of jargon, Jewish German jargon, and it appears, the word Mauscheln appears very prominently in a letter that Kafka wrote to his friend Max Brod. And I'll give you a quotation in the spirit of yesterday's talk. I think I may give a long quotation and just leave it at that and see if you can make connections of that with what Fred was saying. So Kafka, writing to his friend in 1921, he says, Mauscheln, taken in the widest sense in which it has to be taken, consists of a bumptious, tacit, and self-pitying appropriation of someone else's property, something not earned, but stolen by means of a relatively casual gesture, even though there's no evidence of a single solecism. I intend thereby to say nothing against Mauscheln, for Mauscheln is in itself beautiful. It is an organic fusion of written German and gestural language, and then Papierdeutsch und Gebärdensprachen. And then in parenthesis, he says, how vivid this is. And then he means to have you do a kind of little pantomime. He says, for example, where is this talent of his? Or raising the elbow and lifting his chin. Do you think so? And so on. Various kinds of German expressions. So it's a mixture of written German and gestural language, and the fruit of a sensitivity to language that recognizes that in German only the dialects, and then also only the most personal High German, are really alive, while the rest is average, ordinary speech. It's nothing but ashes, which can be raised to a semblance of life only when excitable Jewish hands mix things up. Most young Jews who begin to write German wanted to leave Judaism behind them, and their fathers approved of this. But vaguely, this vagueness was what was outrageous to them. But with their little back legs, they were still glued to their father's Judaism, and with their front legs, they found no new ground. The ensuing despair became their inspiration. An inspiration, honorable like any other, but on closer inspection, in fact, a very sorry affair, for that which fed their despair was not German literature, although on the surface it seemed to be that. They lived, these young Jews, amidst three impossibilities. I call them impossibilities only, because that's the simplest thing, but they might be termed quite differently. The impossibility not to write, the impossibility to write German, and the impossibility to write differently. One might also add a fourth impossibility, the impossibility to write at all. For the despair was not something that could be stilled through writing. It was in fact only a provisional solution, as in the case of someone who writes his will just before hanging himself. A provisional solution, thus, that might well last a whole lifetime. It was thus in all respects an impossible literature, a gypsy literature, which had stolen the German child out of its cradle and in great haste put it through some kind of training. For someone has to dance on a tightrope, but it wasn't even a German child. It was nothing. People merely said that it was somebody dancing. And there the letter breaks off. So with that little introduction, let me introduce you to Fred.